Welcome back to Top Business, everyone. Hope you're doing well. It's often hard to take correct decisions regarding money, especially if you're a young person dealing with a lot of other issues. And so, to help you out, today we have some very important tips on how not to make financial mistakes that'll cost you a lot of cash. In this video, we'll tell you about 10 money traps to avoid in your 20s. Make sure you stay till number 1 because all the top 10 tips in this video are very crucial. Number 10. Making irrational decisions not supported by your income. Spending some amount of money on someone or something is a big part of relationships. It starts right from paying for dates to planning a wedding. But it's important to remember that you are seeking a partner who shares your values and someone to build a future together. Instead of exhausting it on a wedding, invest it towards buying homes, cars, or anything else your long-term vision holds. There's a saying that says, cut your coat according to your size. All our decisions, most especially lifetime decisions like marrying, should be one that would support our income. There are a few ways to avoid making irrational decisions. Amongst them are seeking useful information, avoiding common pitfalls, looking at your history, taking time to think, and always analyze thoroughly. Number 9. Avoid decisions with no reason. The first financial hardship of most young people is student loans, to be carried throughout this decade and possibly into the next. Before you invest in an expensive educational path, establish what your desired career field requires. Maybe a trade school, certificate, or apprenticeship would be equally effective. If you do not know what you want to pursue professionally, you could work for a year and examine that question. Number 8. Going into debt. Falling into debt should be avoided, irrespective of the amount of debt. Your debt is an emergency, so you need to plan a debt rebate plan to reacquire control of your money and life, whether you have a small amount of debt or a mountain of the stuff. Speak to almost any financially prosperous individual in their 40s and 50s, and they will smile about the days of having nothing but cheap pasta and meeting shuttling places on the city bus. They had these experiences in their early lives. Now, before you start a family and want to make a career change or want to buy a house, this is the time to nip the pennies. Nip them hard and be careful to differentiate between needs and wants. Every cent will be used in the years to come. Living a life free of debt earns you, number 1, relief from anxiety. Knowing you're required to make a payment of a specific amount on a bill like a credit card or auto loans can be worrying, especially if your budget is short. Number 2, increased savings. Absence of debt also means paying no interest, and the absence of interest implies you can channel a significant amount of money into your personal savings account. Extra savings allow you to build and increase your emergency fund and save for retirement. Number 3, better financial health. When you're free of debt, your credit score and other pointers of financial health, such as your debt-to-income ratio, DTI, point to very good. Though this may not seem relevant since your intention is not to get more loans or credit cards, good credit is useful in many ways. Your future landlords can use your credit score to decide whether to rent a house to you, and also you can get a better car insurance rate and avoid paying deposits on utilities and cell phones. Number 4, freedom to choose. When you're choked up with debt, you find yourself caught up on a debt treadmill. Being free of owing people money puts a spring in your step because you know you're not committed. Instead of pouring any extra earnings into a debt, you can spend the money on whatever you choose, such as traveling or giving to a charitable organization. Number 5, a stronger marriage. Problems, including debt, always put a stress on marriage. Even when both companions see the debt as an obstacle and are struggling to reduce it, the pressure it causes presents them more likely to be annoyed with each other. It can also harm them physically, draining the vitality out of their sex life. Nevertheless, when one part of the couple is striving hard to pay off the debt while the other keeps blithely spending, that's a situation that's bound to lead to disagreements about money, one of the most significant sources of tension in a marriage. The Institute of Divorce Financial Analysts says money problems are the third most common cause of divorce, right after fundamental incompatibility and infidelity. The good news is that when you work through these problems together, your marriage can come out stronger in the end. The process of paying off your debt will force you to communicate better, and the experience of surviving a crisis together will create a stronger bond between you. Do all you can to get that debt out of your life so you can start living a fulfilled life again. Number 7, living off credit cards. Credit cards are created as short-term loan instruments and should only be used as such. Credit cards are not intended to become replacement tools. Don't get completely dependent on them. What's the sure way to not end up spiraling, building debt, or living off your credit cards? Restrict yourself to one card with cash compensations. Only buy what you can afford and then instantly pay it off when it's due. Commit to a budget and save for expected needs. Number 6. Borrowing money for cars. Borrowing money for cars is not a wise choice. While vehicle financing allows you to buy a needed means of transportation without saving up for the initial purchase price ahead of time, it can pose potential short-term and long-term problems. Borrowing money to buy a car is no small deal. It implies some amount of obligation, and it will always mean that you will have things to worry about later on. If you're in your 20s, you don't need a luxurious ride. You surely don't need a car note. What you need is a decent vehicle with excellent gas mileage. You may not be able to sustain a car immediately. Urban areas would most likely have buses or trains, while rural districts may have ride-sharing boards. There are several drawbacks attached to borrowing to finance paying for cars. Number 1. High interest rates. When you pick up a credit from the bank, there is always the possibility that interest rates could go up over time, especially if you've taken out a loan with an uncertain interest term. That could potentially make the investment very difficult to repay. There is also the likelihood that the terms of the loan can change during the lifetime of the loan, making it unfavorable for your business. Number 2. Possible repossession. Car financing is a form of obtained loan, meaning you must agree to put up the vehicle as a guarantee to gain approval for the loan. If that also implies that if you falter or neglect on your payments, you might also be surprised to look out your window one day and see a tow truck pulling the vehicle away. Also, having a vehicle repossession puts a dark spot on your credit history that can last for several years. Number 5. Ignoring the future. You can't possibly know what the future has in store for you, but if you at least don't have a plan for it, then you might be in trouble. No one knows what the future holds, but with decent preparation, we can prepare for it. Start saving for retirement now, with your goal toward opting for investment alternatives that earn tax breaks, such as contributions to a Roth IRA. Young people should plan for their futures and mind the decisions they make. Number 4. Grow up your emergency fund. Believe it or not, an emergency fund can come to a rescue at some time that you couldn't even imagine. A proper emergency reserve includes adequate savings to cover up to 6 months of living expenses and should be there for any promptu or unforeseen circumstances like job loss. More is better. What if your car develops a fault or your child needs braces all in the same week? More unusual things have happened, so start growing up your emergency fund today. Having an emergency reserve is a must. Think of it as a cash absorber for the blows of life, which will keep you from adding to the amount of debt that you owe. The recent coronavirus pandemic outbreak has mirrored significant attention to having an emergency fund should a crisis hit. One of the fundamental steps in rising out of debt is to provide yourself with a way to not go into more debt, and to cover that up, you need an emergency fund. Number 3. Sacrificing insurance. Accidents can happen to anyone at any time. You can either learn that now or learn when you are fallen into debt to pay for the ambulance fee and medical costs from an emergency, when a driver sues you after a car accident, or when striving to replace personal items after a break-in. Look around for competitive rates, then plan your budget adequately and insure yourself and your property. Buying and updating your insurance plans and policies provide economic protections against the unexpected losses, shares risks and uncertainties in significant losses, eliminates dependency, covers for the loss of property to theft, accident, and fire. Number 2. Failing to plan. Perhaps the most important thing when it comes to dealing with finances. Planning aims at forecasting and presenting a means for analyzing the future and drafting up a plan of action. Cash flow issues are bound to occur if you don't plan properly for where and when your finances are needed. A perfect financial plan is necessary to maximize your income, help you invest smartly, and evade unnecessary taxes every year. Invest in a yearly session with a fiscal planning expert, or hit the library and study up on your own. Proper planning gives you a direction, saves time, makes fewer mistakes, establish and maintain balance in your life. It also gives you a sense of peace, makes you feel more powerful, more passionate, visualize a better future, and gives you a sense of freedom. Number 1. Turning to family and friends. Asking your family and friends for help is never a wise choice, especially because they might get tarnished if you're unable to repay back in time. Maintain your friendships and family ties by going to relevant sources for credit. If you do find yourself in dire need of funds, visit the bank. Seeking help from families and friends have drawbacks like: Number 1. Lack of clarity. Since loans from friends and families don't necessarily require the same legal documentation as those provided by a bank or other lender, family members and friends may assume their financial investment gives them a stake in the company or a voice in daily operations. Number 2. Social embarrassment. One of the drawbacks of owing money to loved ones is that it may open up unwanted discussion about your spending habits. Whereas a bank won't direct you to stop going out to dinner or dissuade you from buying a new car, money lenders, who are also family or friends, may reprimand you for spending your money when you have yet to refund your debt. While you are here, go ahead and click on one of these 2 videos on your screen. See you there!